From his tough upbringing in the favelas of Brazil to hammering Israel Adesanya and being crowned the middleweight champ, here's why fighters are really scared of Alex Poatan Pereira.
It was a very hard fight, but just like Robert said, I was going through a fight every day at the gym. I was going through 5 rounds all the time. For everybody that say they couldn't do 5 rounds, look what I just did right now. I'm ready for the next.
First things first, let's get the obvious out of the way. The man is just built to annihilate his opponents. As Robert Whittaker put it best, he's an absolute giant. The Poatan towers at 6 feet 4 inches and 185 pounds of pure fighting prowess. His 79-inch reach helps him get in some lethal strikes on his opponents while he keeps his distance. It's crazy that the guy is even allowed in the middleweight division. Robert Whittaker continued his founded rant on Pereira, highlighting how his features were huge in every way. Israel Adesanya is a pretty tall dude, and Pereira completely eclipses him. His big forearms help him pack a heck of a punch. No, seriously, if you think Francis Ngannou was the hardest striker in the UFC, think again. Those thick calves and thighs made him the most feared kickboxer in the world. Pair those natural gifts with the fact that his single-digit body fat percentage, there goes the padding on those iron fists. UFC veteran Paul Felder spilled the beans on Joe Rogan's podcast, saying it's not your bulky Brock Lesnar type of guys, but it's the lean guys that he worries about. He has just the right muscle, exactly where it needs to be, kind of like John Jones. No wonder everyone in the UFC locker room is talking about the new kid on the block. The man's nickname quite literally means stone hands. Sugar O'Malley claims they're as big as both his fists put together, and boy, did Sean Strickland feel them at UFC 276. In the first round of the bout, Alex teased Strickland by distracting him with some stinging leg kicks. It was then that Sean made a fatal mistake. He let his guard down with a clean right hook followed by some vicious jabs. Pereira made a statement. If you thought that was uncomfortable to watch, how about his textbook knockout of Thomas Powell at LFA 95? The buildup was similar. Keep the opponent busy with your kicks while you set up the knockout blow. Powell remained flat on the mat for a good minute. Word is, when Powell got up, he asked the medical staff if he was fighting. Going back to the Ngannou comparison, the numbers speak for themselves. When measuring his power on the punch machine, Pereira clocked in a whopping 969 compared to the Predator's 941, and he looked like he wasn't even trying. If you look closely, his hooks are incredibly short, which assists his genetically gifted hands to generate some ridiculous power. Pereira has, overall, won 6 fights in his professional MMA career, 5 of which resulted in a TKO. But genetics aren't everything. Pereira's name is in every fighter's mouth because of his unorthodox fighting style.
Never thought about the past fight. Focus on this one. He was a champ for a reason. We trash talk each other a little bit, but I want to say that I have the absolute respect for him. This is one of the hardest fights that I ever did.
The man will fade, the man will duck, and before you know it, he'll leave you in the dust. Joe Rogan praised of the Brazilian assassin, saying that it's not just power, but Pereira is very technical. I mean, the fact that he's 3-0 against one of the most intelligent fighters in the game, Israel Adesanya, should speak volumes. In their third bout, it was fascinating to see how Pereira set him up for the left hook that almost ended it there for the style bender. Pair that up with the way he completely offsets Izzy's kicks? Come on! Every time Adesanya would look to shake Pereira's foundation, the Poatan would lift his knee and Uno reversed the effort. Pereira knew he had found the chink to Adesanya's armor and continued to work his legs. Izzy's frame was finished by the end of the night, as he revealed the champ had hit his perineal nerve. This just goes to show Alex isn't just strong, he's accurate too. What makes him so lethal is that unlike most heavy punchers, Alex doesn't rely on his fists. He can come at you with a flying knee before you can say cachasas. Ex-Glory champion Jason Wilness would agree. Against the middleweight, Pereira proved why he was such an elite kickboxer. In the very first round of the fight, Pereira busted Wilness open with a snappy head kick as he stood till the count. Still rocked by the shot, Pereira thumped him with a flying knee. If that wasn't scary enough, he started the celebrations with a tribal roar. But let's get some context on why that roar sounded so perfect. You see, there's a reason behind Pereira's superhuman genetics and killer instinct. It's because he belongs to an indigenous heritage. The fighter admitted that when he started training for kickboxing, he found out that his teacher had indigenous roots. Inspired by this, Pereira went home to his mother, who confirmed that he was of native blood. His ancestral line belongs to one of the most remote places in the world. They had to find their way on their own, being one with nature. We're talking through the Amazon rainforest, away from civilization kind of remote. Following this revelation, something sparked deep inside Pereira as he revealed that he started to feel more confident in his abilities. He knew he was made for this. He commenced a ritual with a bow and arrow, followed by a sequence of indigenous music, and from then on out, Pereira wished to revive his origins and indigenous culture through MMA. This pretty much explains the extravagant paintwork and attire Pereira dons in his weigh-ins before a fight. It's what puts him in the zone and prepares him for battle. To this day, Pereira mimics shooting an arrow right before his walk-ins, which is straight up cold. Poetan's coach, Plinio Cruz, phrased it best: the more he feels connected with his ancestry, the more he feels as though he's part of something much bigger than himself. But what really makes Pereira scary is his stoic mentality. He dropped out of school at just 12 years old and spent 10 hours a day hurling tires and drowning in oil and grime to keep up appearances. This reflects his crazy work ethic as an MMA champion. However, growing up in the favela and struggling to keep food on the table, Alex caved into the habit of drinking at just 13. Alex revealed on the MMA OG podcast that he thoroughly enjoyed drinking, but deep down he knew he was better than that. At 22 years old, Pereira found his salvation through kickboxing. His obstacle eventually became his path. From then on out, the fighter paved his way to becoming an 8-time kickboxing champion and UFC middleweight champion. Despite being so ridiculously gifted, it's astonishing how humble Pereira is. Alex Pereira completely demolished the kickboxing scene. Some even call him the greatest kickboxer of all time. But when he came into MMA, he knew he was starting from scratch. There was no ego, no trash talk, just him being a student of the game, learning diligently. He also revealed on the podcast that his strikes keep improving, solely because they're MMA strikes. But with that said, Pereira respectfully incorporated his kickboxing flavor into the transition. The greatest demonstration of Pereira's sportsmanship and humility can be seen in the build-up to the Adesanya fight. Poetan had completely obliterated Adesanya in their first 2 encounters at Glory, where most fighters would come in rubbing losses in their opponent's face. Pereira simply said in the press conference that he had forgotten about their previous encounters, and that he'd been facing Izzy like it was their first ever encounter. He just doesn't need pesky mind games to get the better of his opponents. But make no mistake, when he's fired up, he's absolutely ferocious. In his third fight with Adesanya, Izzy had been in control for the majority of the match. Pereira's coach, Glover Teixeira, reminded the Poetan of his mission. In the post-fight conference, Pereira revealed how Glover kept it real with him, saying he needed to knock Izzy out. Otherwise, it was clear Izzy would have won if it went to the judges. With Pereira's instinct to kill, he stood up, and as the camera zoomed in, he mouthed,
185 pounds, 5th.
"You vote to matar," which translates to "I will kill you." With a barrage of devastating shots, Pereira obliterated Izzy to become the new middleweight champion. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why fighters are really scared of Alex Pereira.